Welcome to the Hacked Off Podcast. I'm your host, C.S. Joseph, and joined by my co-host, Mr. Yuri Skarzynski, the kahuna himself. Always kahuna-ing, and you definitely flexed your kahuna muscle today. Thank you for that, sir. I appreciate it. It's a nice big, what do you call it? Elbow from above?
Elbow from the sky.
Elbow from the sky. Oh,
Coming down.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
Superman.
Like Superman.
From orbit, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So, folks, we want to hear from you. You could contact us directly. Just hit our link tree links there in the description of our videos on Spotify and on YouTube. Or, talk to us on Discord, discord.gg/egohackers. Go ahead and join, fill out the application. Make sure you actually read the instructions of the application, because if you don't, you will be caught and you will be thrown out. So, actually demonstrate that you have judgment and are capable of decision-making, and actually read the fucking application and actually fill it out exactly as it says so that you can be accepted. If you don't do that, you will be exposed, you will be made fun of, and you'll be escorted out. And we will be not apologetic about it, and we don't give a shit. And then also, we're sponsored by the CS Joseph YouTube channel and the Ego Hacker community. So school.com/CS Joseph, SKOOL.com/CS Joseph. $29 a month. Find out if you're unconscious developed or subconscious developed, and how you can improve yourself so that you can avoid some of the pitfalls that we talk about here on the Hacked Off podcast, especially with the men, so that you can avoid being hacked off. That is, your dicks being cut off by society or yourself in the process. Or for women, so that you don't get with gutless, dickless men who are basically going to be ruining your lives on a regular basis. And also, the first episode of this series is basically, it's like what we call episode 0, is the Apex of Hypergamy episode that we just did. And today's episode is a 3-part series that we're going to be doing over the next 3 episodes, talking about women and just how bad they have it. So as a result of that, we have decided to title today's episode, Why Women Deserve Better, as Mr. Yuri came up with.
Unlike Myron Gaines, who says women deserve less.
Yeah.
And maybe they do, but not as much as the men who deserve even less than they do.
Yeah, there's
Myron
just
deserves less.
Yeah, there's just no excuse. And what was the guy? He's got Walter Weeks, aka Fresh Prince CEO, with a claimed 4-digit body count or whatever, getting a prostitute pregnant and being
prostitutes don't count, but also he's lying.
Yeah, it's just
it's just ridiculous. And he's like a child, like a teenager. Only someone in high school will think that's cool.
Yeah.
This is a grown man saying, "Oh, I have 1,000 body count." No one cares, and even if that were true, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
No one's impressed. Also, you're obviously lying.
And he doesn't even have proper judgment either. So it's just especially after a day like today, I've come to the conclusion that men need to be going out of the way to protect not only their potential to have sober judgment, but also protect their actual sober judgment. And that way, when it comes to using substances or whatever, from a neural pathway perspective, the more you indulge in substances, the more your neural pathways are going to wire incorrectly. And then you could be a UD man, but then what if substances get in the way and prevent you from becoming UDJ, and you end up being UDUF your entire life, a UDP male your entire life, specifically because you indulged in substances for too long, and you've basically literally stunted or prevented your brain from growing and reaching your maximum potential just on substance use alone. And this also includes alcohol. I am very concerned about this.
Plus, you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Yeah.
There comes a time when it's all right, you're a grown man, you should have your fucking life figured out to at least a certain threshold by this time. And if you don't, then it's probably not going to happen.
Well, the societal threshold for that is, for a man, last I checked, was 18 or 21, especially 21. You see what I'm saying? So it's okay. I mean, we don't even let people under 21 join the Ego Hackers Discord server, right?
For good reason.
Yeah, for very good reason. And that's just what it has to be. I mean, if you're 18 to 21 and you're enjoying our content, good on you. Getting advice, apply it to your life, talk to other people who are older than you, so that you can process the things that we teach So you're not walking around acting like you have a fucking loaded gun and you're going to make someone's lives worse because you're misunderstanding what we're teaching, and then as a result of that, like directly using it as justification to ruin your life and other people's lives in the process. Like, we're not down for that shit. And it's just like, actually practice sober judgment, because the Bible says a wise man has many counselors, which means if you're learning something, talk to somebody else about it. Don't learn in a fucking vacuum. Don't apply in a fucking vacuum. Okay? And I've had to learn this the hard way in my life so many times. And when I see other men struggling with it, I'm just like, guys, like, seriously, the Bible says what it says for a fucking reason. Like, actually, like, do it. You know, because like I'm the worst example of that, frankly, in a lot of ways throughout my life. And I just see other men struggle with it. I'm just like, come on. Like, clearly you were potentially raised in a vacuum. You know, and then of course that would happen because of the fucking step simps, you know, that we have to deal with on a regular basis. So it's just bullshit. Anyway, I digress. So what do you got for comments?
We got Zach and 7. I'm literally leaving my parents' house as I'm listening to this episode, and I'll be living in my car starting tonight. My father always makes assumptions about me, and I just couldn't take it anymore. I lost all respect for him. May God bless you two, Yuri and Chase.
Okay, well, just don't forget the 5th commandment, you know, which is honor thy mother and father.
Better have a good reason.
Yeah.
I hope. I mean, I don't know your situation, Zach, but or Zachin, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
I don't know what the situation is because he didn't really elaborate.
No.
But I have made this mistake before, cutting off contact with my father for unjust reasons, and I regret it to this day. So make sure you don't cause damage that will last a lifetime for both yourself and others, and you have actual good reasons for doing what you're doing. And also keep the potential, depending on what it is, obviously, of reconciliation open. But if you have to leave for your own sanity, then do so. But I would recommend be careful with the bridge burning, especially if it's your own family.
Yeah, as a man who is guilty of bridge burning with my own family, and as much as I could point the finger at my parents, the reality of the situation is that I am still commanded to honor my mother and father. And the reason why is because, as we have stated, especially in our episode about step simps, about the importance of a man's investment in his wife and his children and his family, basically, them eating, them being clothed, them having everything that they needed to have. And honestly, it just doesn't fucking matter. Like, he does not have to feed you at the end of the day. Like, he is being idealistic towards you. A man's idealism needs to be rewarded, right? We were even having a conversation last night, and well, this will be a few episodes out, but we're talking about how women need to be able to perceive a man's idealism, right? And in order for them to feel safe, to even for them to even give consideration for a man and like weigh out which side of her hypergamy that he falls under, for her to even get to that point. And we'll be talking about that 4 episodes out, I imagine, including today. But the point is that, like, you know, your father is your father. Your father is idealistic towards you, his child. So you have to afford him that honor. You have to afford him that respect. So just make sure that whatever you're doing is respectful. Now, granted, the Bible says don't provoke your child to anger, right? But, you know, that's kind of more of like the Apostle Paul, not so much on Jesus, basically, as near as I can tell. And correct me on that if I misquoted that. But the bottom line is that, like, you guys got to take responsibility. You know, we even have, like, an ego hacker in the community where I just, like, literally directly told him, no, you got to stay with your parents because without you, like, they're going to completely fall apart and you need to honor them. And, you know, luckily he decided to take my advice and actually make that decision, for which I'm very, very thankful he did. So yeah, like, for sure. What's next?
We got Hadiza 1. Disagree. Unrealistic for the first man a girl gets with to be the best man. Have to do trial and error and be willing to pivot to get the best results or ruin your life, LOL.
That's not female biology at all. Like, that's not, like, this is an example of women having to have this masculine mindset just for the sake of their survival, which today's episode is actually about. You know, it's like, no, like that's all bullshit. That's completely false. That is a myth. Don't pay attention to that shit. Because the reality of the situation is that she's only even able to say that because she's been raised in isolation, and then as a result have had these bullshit expectations put upon her by her family and her culture to even be able to have these conversations. Because remember, women are computers, men are programmers, and ultimately society, as a result of men, is also a programmer, and then women are being programmed consistently. Women are not programmers. As much, even if they're subconscious developed judging females, which is like the highest pinnacle of what is possible psychologically for female judgment, it is literally impossible for a woman to become a programmer. And that's actually what gets these women in trouble, because the SDJ women believe that they can program their man and actually make him more masculine over time. And then when they have the epiphany that they can't do that anymore, that's when they initiate divorce and go all fucking development phase.
Also, because of the stuff we're going to be talking about, I was wondering just now actually, if like the men have their burden of performance, women have theirs.
Yeah.
They're different things.
Yeah.
Could it be that women are not following their burden of performance towards men because they're being bogged down with all these other burdens that are being put on them that are not their actual burden of performance?
That is correct. Yeah, that is exactly it. That is exactly it. Like,
we're going to be explaining why in detail.
How can a woman be submissive to a man and his leadership if she ends up having the burden of doing tasks that are what a leader should be doing? Like, how is that even possible? There's not enough space in a woman's head for it. There's a lot of space in men's heads. There's a lot of space in there. Women actually have 50% of the space that men have for decision making. The reason why is because the other half of her brain is specifically for child rearing.
And men are supposed to be generalists. Women are supposed to be specialists.
Specialists, yeah.
So when they can't specialize because they're being bogged down with all these other things that aren't technically their burden, but have become their burden, how can they ever be expected to be feminine or do what they're supposed to do
they can't.
or uphold their end of the bargain?
They're set up for failure.
They can't.
They're completely set up for failure, especially by their father, or even more so their stepfathers. And this is going back many, many generations. This is going back to the children raised in the 60s. I know we blame the boomers a lot for a lot of things, but the problem is that like the World War II was so bad on people and so hard on people, especially with all the propaganda that came out from both sides in World War II, that people were coming home completely and utterly broken, or at least incompatible with their wives. And it's like dad came home and he's a completely different person, all that PTSD, all that shell shock, and it was extremely difficult for them to even integrate. And like the family broken, then boom, we have family law, then boom, we have children raised to be degenerate in the 60s, and then we have the boomers. Now the boomers are running this country, and it's all an absolute fucking disaster. And women, as a result of that, have been completely set up for failure as a result. You know, and society didn't even have any remote support for the men who are coming home from the war. Like none. And then when those children, the people who grew up in the 60s, ended up being drafted to go to Vietnam in the 70s, the amount of hatred for that was even worse. So yeah, it's just an absolute shit show. And then women continue to take the brunt of that. So like, yeah, why do women deserve more? I mean, we also have another example. You got any more comments?
One more thing on this comment, and then that's it.
Sure.
He misunderstood us completely, by the way. He said, disagree, unrealistic for the first man a girl gets with to be the best man. We didn't really say that. He would be the best man by default in that moment.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean he stays that for life.
Correct.
Someone else can step in and become the apex. It doesn't have to be the guy that took a woman's virginity.
Yes.
So I think he completely misunderstood what we were saying.
This is why women are criticized so hard for their sexual choices and their sexual decisions, because women are being, because you know, the propensity for cheating is actually higher with women than it comes with men anyway. Even though technically I advocate that there's no such thing as male cheating, there's just fornication, which I am also arguing is biblical rape to a point, and we're going to be exploring that a little bit deeper in today's show.
Yeah, we're not lessening the behavior by saying it's not cheating.
Yeah.
That's not what we're doing. We're not excusing behavior. We're just reclassifying it as it should be classified.
Lying is still lying. Like Tom Likas and Rollo Tomassi teach lying. Yeah, and proof of lying from a man is actually just lack of commitment. That is like concrete evidence to any woman. I mean, if he's been with you for like 2 years and you're having sex with him, but he hasn't presented a ring to you, like, he's a fucking liar, in my opinion. He's a liar, you know? And, like, I've been there. I treated a woman like that once. But I did present a ring to her, finally. The problem is, though, is that, like, all of a sudden I become C.S. Joseph overnight, and then all of a sudden she's got women who are, like, way younger than her by, like, 10 years trying to get with me, and she gets hella insecure and then comes at me with some kind of violence, and I just had to call the whole thing off because I just couldn't deal with that situation because she couldn't deal with that situation. But at the same time, my regret is she couldn't deal with that situation because she's feeling unsafe for the fact that I didn't commit to her for years. You see what I'm saying? That basically makes me a fucking shitbag. That makes me a fucking piece of shit. And I regret that. I hella regret that. Don't act like me. Don't act like me in my past. Like, folks, I do these shows so that you don't repeat my mistakes. So that you don't have to carry this big fucking burden of guilt and shame that I carry as a result of my sexual decisions in my life. You know, like, I'm an adulterer. I have committed adultery in my past. Okay, I am a sinner. Now, I'm working hard on repentance every single day and working to be a better example to all of you and my family. But the reality of the situation is that I go out of my way because I don't want my past to be your future. Like, seriously. And also, to be fair, I have also failed because, like, you know, like if I have daughters, right, you know, and I do have one, but, like, dad is supposed to be the example of what a man should be to his daughter and use him as her model for, like, what a man should be. And have I done that throughout the history of my life? Absolutely not. Like, in general, I haven't done that. So I consistently am judging myself a shitbag all the time because of the poor example that I have been. And, you know, we were confronted with the whole crusader concept, and it's not just crusaders that do this, but they're more likely to do this, in my opinion, to throw up their hands and be like, well, I don't know, no one told me. But then the reality is that it's your responsibility as a man to actually go find out what you don't know instead of expecting other people to tell you. For example, how I've dishonored my parents when I was growing up, but I'm just a child, so it's different, but, like, it's still the same principle, is that I would always get upset finding out that I'd be breaking rules when the rules were never explained to me, and I would hold that against people. But as a man, it's my responsibility to find out what the fucking rules are, find out why those rules are there, and that way I could actually support those rules and execute those rules in my life and hold other people accountable towards those rules because rules are there for a reason. There's another concept. It's called Chesterton's fence, and that is you buy a piece of property, you see that there's a fence there. Do you take the fence down or do you leave it up? If you take the fence down, well, the reason why the fence is there could all of a sudden be ruining your life. Fences are there for a reason. The Bible says, don't move ancient marking stones. Like, don't move, don't, like, there's reasons for things there that you may not know, but it's your job to find out why the fuck they're there before you make any fucking choice. That's the point. That's how you have sober judgment. But men just don't fucking, and this is all men. This doesn't matter if you're SD or UD. There's a serious male judgment, fucking, like lack of male judgment in this world that is so bad, okay? In this episode, yeah, we're going to talk a lot about SD men, but we're going to be shitting pretty hard on, like, everybody. Because, like, you know, women deserve more than what this fucking world has done to them. Like, I don't understand, like, how any man, especially these fucking red pillars, could not feel bad for them. Like, holy shit. Especially when you walk around in public and you know these things about women and you look at women and you just see how fucking bad they have it. Then you're having a fucking bleeding heart over just the stupidity. And then you're having even more of a bleeding heart about how you, in your past, were such a fucking shitbag that you made everything worse for them. Because, yeah, that was me, the shitbag. Don't be a shitbag. Don't be like me in my past. Holy fucking shit. Learn from my mistakes. Learn. And I, yeah, sure, like anyone else, I make mistakes, but I got to learn from them. But this is why I go out of my way to teach you folks so that you don't become who I was. My past should not be your future. This is the advantage, of wisdom. Learn from my past so you don't become who I was. Seriously. You know what? We actually have an example. We have an example that we learned about earlier today. Flood spore. Good old flood spore. We love flood spore, right? Shout out to our bro, Feminism. Fantastic fellow. Great dude. Recording artist. Author. Competitive swimmer. Veteran. Fantastic guy. Love him. The kindest human being I have ever met in my life.
Same.
Like literally the actual kindest person. And his brother took advantage of his kindness. And his brother last night, and we're talking a lot about sexual sin and all these problems, how like these SD men have like this fucking loaded gun between their legs. Well, it's all men have a loaded gun between their legs. Holy shit. And then women are suffering as a result. Here's the thing. Like, he realizes that his brother had a fucking one-night stand in his own house. Wow. Think of all the risk. Because then you have to start asking what-if questions. What if that woman is in a relationship with another man? Is his brother, is that man going to show up at his doorstep and like potentially murder them over that? Or what if that girl was underage? Is he gonna have some cops showing up and dragging them both away? You see what I'm saying? Like, what if? There's so many what if scenarios there, and like, what if her father gets involved? And like, this guy is not paying rent. He doesn't even have a fucking job. He thinks he's got a security blanket from this perceived job that he has, but it's not really a job.
He hasn't even started the job yet.
Oh,
he's
wow.
counting like the eggs before they hatch, and pretending like he's going to be like this massive success.
Classic SD male behavior. You know what? That is exactly who I was in my fucking early 20s. If my cousins ever like watch this or whatever, my male cousins, thank you so much for shitting on me. Thank you so much. To my father, thank you so much for shitting on me for how much of a weak ass loser. I am so sorry, sir, that I was ungrateful. I think my dad like just fucking gave up on me because he just didn't even know what to do. And I get it. Like
we had to give up on somebody today for
my
the
ass
same
should have
reason.
been beat more. Yeah, we had to do that. Exactly the same reason. Like my ass should have been beat more. Like I regret that. And yeah, sure, I got beef with my dad or whatever, but at the end of the day, like, I have to take responsibility for my own fuck-ups and my own sin, man. Like my parents, like, it's not, who am I to fucking judge whether or not they deserve how I've treated them based on how they've treated me? Who am I to do that? Like, at the end of the day, like, that's not my place. It's not my fucking place at all. I am commanded to honor my mother and father, and I regret dishonoring them. I hope one day that my children watch these videos and see that their father is like on the path to not being a fucking degenerate because he's literally failed every semblance of family in his life. That's who I am. I'm a family failure. But I've turned it around. I've been working on turning it around. I've been taking classes. I've been getting educated. I've been talking to other men who are fathers, other men who are husbands. I've had leaders in the church get in my face about my reprehensible behavior and hold me accountable towards the belief system that I claim to have. And here I am, a fucking hypocrite. And I regret it. So I will not be dishonoring my mother and father moving forward. I will not. I am repenting of this behavior. And there's a lot to repent about, gentlemen. And that's what this episode is about, because all of you, literally all of you in this culture are harming women, whether you're aware of it or not, is immaterial.
And we're about to make you aware of it.
We are going to. And guess what? Biblically, once you become aware of something, you're responsible for it, because it is written, if any man knows what good he ought to do, but he does not do it, for him it is sin. Like, seriously, grow the fuck up. And that's what this is all about. You need to grow the fuck up. So this came from something that you said. This whole episode was your idea. But not only that, you are the one that planted the seed. When you said subconscious developed men claim that women have it better. Like, and you know what? I've heard that so many times in my life. You know, there was a situation where an ex-wife of mine, like, I believe that she had cheated on me. I got a paternity test. I got all this shit, you know. And you know what I did? I immediately turned to the red pill. I would go off on a longboard by myself and literally just study all the red pill. And I got really deep into the Manosphere and went in that direction. And then what did that do? Lead to, like, further stupidity. Not only that, other men in my life at the time even actually encouraged me. And these men, they weren't Christian. These men, you know, they were secular humanists. My own father accused me of teaching secular humanism. I got so fucking offended at him for that statement. But you know what? He's right. He was right. I was teaching secular humanism. And I wouldn't listen. I just don't, like, I really struggle listening to my dad. It's the point now where I'm like, if he speaks, I'm like, yes, sir, no, sir, at this point. You know, like, that's it. Hopefully he gives me a voice. But I am not entitled to having a voice when it comes to my father. I'm not. So it is what it is. I love him. I love my dad. I love my mother. But yeah, like, I just don't want to be a degenerate anymore. And that's what we're here to do, to make sure you all are not a degenerate. And also, like, if you walk away from this episode and the next 2 episodes after this thinking that women have it better than men, you're a shitbag. Like,
or you're just too stupid to figure it out.
Yeah, or entitled or you're a fucking, like you're an example of a man. 1, you're not a man, you're a boy, and 2, you're an example of somebody that I don't want to have anything to do with, like, at all. And I'm not going to put my life in your hands on the battlefield. For example, men who are fathers and have daughters, one of the rubrics or standards that I would use to judge that man is, like, is this man going to save my life in the battlefield? Is he even capable of it? Will he care about me or his brothers to be able to do that? Because if he's not willing to take a bullet for us, why the fuck do I think he's going to be willing to take a bullet for my little girl? You see what I'm saying? Like, that ain't going to happen. That's the problem. And we can't fucking do that. This is why I continue to advocate, for example, that in every nation of this world that has a military, mandatory conscription at the coming of age for a minimum of 2 years. In my opinion, it should be 3. Including going through boot camp and no training timeouts. No training timeouts, no yellow cards, none of that bullshit. You go through the whole process and you fucking man the fuck up. Like, that absolutely has to happen, in my opinion. So, anyway, so SD men continue to use the whole, like, claim that women have it better, and they use this as their justification for plate spinning. And what I would advocate is, like, biblical rape.
Let's talk about why they do that, Tim.
Yeah. Why do they do that?
Because they're man children, don't want responsibility, and they view women as the sex that has less responsibility, and they're envious of that. They literally want to be in the position of women where they just don't have any responsibility, even though they do have responsibility. Envy? Yes.
Pussy envy. That's what this is.
That's what it is.
Oh my God.
It's kind of like Floodsport. He wanted the rich woman. Why? So he could be, like, the stay-at-home, like, cuck that just sits around and, like, does dishes for her, or like what is he imagining that scenario? Like, why does he even want that? Ugh. It's disgusting. Like, he wants to be basically a housewife for a woman because he views that as the easier path than being a man.
Yeah.
It's the shirking of the male burden of performance, which is to basically get your shit together as a man, not have any excuses, and be the safety net for yourself and others.
Yeah.
That's too hard for them, so they want to relinquish that responsibility and live life like a woman who does not have that burden of performance, not even acknowledging that women have their own burden of performance too. But definitely men should not be in the position of envying the female side of things. That's how you get things like, I don't know, transgenderism.
Yes.
So these SD men, they're
Even
already more than
homosexuality.
halfway there with this mindset. When you
Yes,
envy
more
women,
than halfway, yes.
more than halfway.
Yeah. It's so disgusting. That's why, like, when I look at homosexual people or I look at transgender, they're all in their men. They're all SD, like every single one of them. You made a statement about lesbianism recently, relating to that.
I believe a significant portion of them feel so unsafe around men that they can only be with women.
It's a cope. It's a complete cope. It
And
is a
we
survival
came
mechanism.
to this realization yesterday, or maybe you did before, but I did yesterday, which is most, if not all, female behavior can be explained by a defense mechanism to feeling unsafe.
Yeah. And why the fuck would a woman feel safe in this environment? Why the fuck would a woman feel safe in Western civilization, and even some of the Eastern? Like, why would a woman feel safe? There is no, like, they don't even have their father backing them up.
Yeah, because
and
their
many of
father's
them
like,
that are
oh,
married, they, like 80% of marriages out there are what? With SD men? Do you think those women feel safe even in their own marriage? Like, holy shit.
no.
Like CK, my wife, for example, is coming up to me often and telling, I feel so bad about myself. I'm like, well, why? Because you do so much. And I'm like, yeah, because I regret who I used to be. I'm never going to go back and behave that way towards the women in my life ever again. So you are gaining the benefit of those hard lessons that I had to learn. I have to prove to myself consistently every single day that I am not shirking my male burden of performance, especially in my primary relationships of my life as a husband and as a father. And I've been shirking it this whole time. I've been shirking sonhood. I've been shirking husbandhood. I've been shirking fatherhood. I'm done. I'm done shirking. I'm done. I don't even, like, people talk about having the retirement. I don't even believe I deserve to retire. I'm gonna be fucking working hard till, like, I die. Because not only do I believe that's what I deserve, but it's also, like, wholly necessary. Lock maxing until you drop. Like, that's kind of just the reality of the situation.
Or until your health declines to the point where it's actually impossible.
Mm-hmm.
But you have your whole life leading up until that point to prepare yourself for
Yeah.
that. And how many of these men are doing that?
Yeah.
Like none. And funny enough, it's the guys who are obsessed with retirement and resting on their laurels
Yeah.
that will not put in the work required for them to actually retire anyway.
Yeah.
When that's all they're concerned with is like getting to the point in their life where they have no responsibility and they can just rest on their laurels. That's their goal.
Yes.
It should not be a goal.
And that's also idolatry. You're not relying on God, you're relying on society. Like, you can't do that. Don't commit idolatry. Thou shalt not have any gods before me. Come on, pay attention. So, but yeah, men use this as, like, this justification for plate spinning, which is non-committal sex. We know fornication is defined by extramarital sex. I am arguing that all of the laws in the Torah, in Exodus and in Deuteronomy, relating to sexuality and divorce and whatnot, like, all those laws fall under what I am claiming is biblical rape, basically. That includes even seducing a woman. I am making the argument that from a biblical perspective, women, because especially when you consider Numbers chapter 30 and how women, like, when they make a vow or a pledge, if the father on the day that he finds out of it, if he opposes, then it can be completely undone. Same thing goes for a husband who has a wife. If she makes a vow or a pledge, he can undo it. You know, and that's in Numbers chapter 30, okay? Well, my argument is that if that is the case, that basically means that a woman biblically cannot there's no such thing as non-consensual or consensual sex, basically, from a biblical perspective, right? Now, obviously there is from the secular societal perspective. Of course there is, okay. But from a biblical perspective, women are put in this status that should be respected because of the four statuses of women in Numbers 30. The woman who belongs to her father, the woman who belongs to her husband, the divorced woman, and the widow. We had some guy commenting recently about, like, oh, you know, what about widows? And it's like, read the book of Ruth. That explains that entire process and how that works. Read Exodus, read Deuteronomy. It explains all that, okay? Like, Jesus says true religion is taking care of widows and orphans, but taking care of widows and orphans is not necessarily marrying them. and redeeming them. So like you actually have to like use proper sober judgment when you're making those conclusions. So be very careful. But here's the thing, SD men in general, and honestly all men in general, end up robbing fathers, husbands, and ultimately women. Like biblical rape, fornication, extramarital sex, non-committal sex, all of these things are basically robbery. Thou shalt not steal, right? This is all just robbery. And women in general, and I think it's like the main premise that we're going to make, are being robbed. They're being robbed the most. They're being robbed of their happiness. They're being robbed of their future. They're being robbed of their own femininity. They're being robbed of everything. And it's no shock that they run to feminism because of this. Feminism, yeah, while it is a demonic teaching, and it comes from Baal worship and Asherah worship and basically paganism, it comes from paganism, basically. Canaanite paganism is where these concepts originate from. And you see that with Jezebel and Ahab in the Bible. You can see that there. However, as we're going to point out today, what choice do women have but not to be feminists just for the sake of their own survival?
Feminism is a curse that we actually deserve.
Yes, 100%. It is an absolute curse that we deserve, and we hella deserve it. So like, for example, so we got a lot of points, and we asked the ladies of noble character, also known as Lonk, to give us a list of how women actually have it worse. And these fucking red pillars, these manosphere fucks, actually just don't understand how bad women have it. And because of that, they're increasing the chances that the great ravaging will happen, right? As we talked about, there's a whole episode about that here on the Hacked Off podcast. But it's literally like these guys are creating that, and these men are just, these grifters are completely shadowing how women have it so fucking bad. And they do have it really, really bad. So one of the first things that ends up happening is that they act like Satan. Jesus says that Satan is like a roaring lion that goes about and he's ready to devour people. He's able there to rob, kill, and destroy. Well, what happens when what are these plate spinners doing? Well, they're robbing and killing and destroying women, their fathers, and their husbands. Rob, kill, and destroy. And they're basically acting like agents of Satan. Great. They're being fucking demonic. That's the problem. And as a result, like for example, we talk about the step sims, like subconscious developed fathers especially, create a culture of sibling and mothering, which equals raising girls in isolation, which guarantees their loss of femininity. What I've noticed is that subconscious developed men oftentimes are girl dads. I notice that they have more girls than they have sons when they have children. They have more girls than they have sons. But when it comes to their daughters especially, because they like being mothered and taken care of by their wife, they project that onto their daughters. And they expect the daughters to be like their in-home caregiver or their in-home sibling. And this literally creates girls being raised in isolation because the man is the one who is sucking up all of the attention that should actually be going to their daughters. And that attention and that support is not there. Thus, they end up being raised in isolation, and then they end up losing their femininity because they have to invest in their shadow functions, psychologically speaking. And as a result of that, they are being masculinized, literally as a result of their father or their stepfather's behavior. I have to hand it to the few women out there who have been able to maintain their femininity regardless of this behavior. For example, my wife CK is a perfect example of a woman who was in that situation, but she went out of her way to maintain her femininity as a result, and she's done well. There's a few other women in the LONC who also have been able to maintain their femininity, even though their fathers, shirking their male burden of performance, basically were grooming their daughters to be men and raising their daughters to be men, raising their daughters to fulfill their male burden of performance for them in the context of their own home. I actually know a woman in her 30s who is a virgin and who has been a victim of this by her own father. You know, and she lives in Europe and whatnot. And it's a very, very, very sad story. It's an extremely sad story. My heart goes out to that woman because that is exactly how he treats her. And she's so easily guilted. She's so trusting. And that man takes advantage of the guilt and takes advantage of the trusting. And then she's basically acting like his mother or his wife or his sibling, an elder female sibling, to take care of him in his own home. And as he's gained in years, and now he's basically elderly, she feels like she feels so trapped because the fact that any man that would take her on, even though she's a virgin, would end up taking on the burden of her father in the process. And that's not very attractive to men now, is it? You see what I'm saying? And he is and because of his behavior, this woman has been robbed of being able to have a husband and children, and she's basically effectively too old. And that is such a sad story. And we've seen it happen right in front of us over and over and over. This is a very common story, especially in Muslim culture. It's a very common story. And it's really fucking retarded. And here's an example. You want to actually see like women that kind of like virtue signal this? We talk about the fat, tattooed hoe. And those girls are usually family slaves like this, or they're neglected. You know, and then like, it goes even more. Like the subconscious development men expect women to be their therapist. And then because of this also, like you look at social media, and the women are like basically in general, as stated by the LO&C girls, they're being brainwashed by social media to prefer being alone. But again, who can blame them? Who can blame them? You see the women, like I was reading a woman on Twitter recently talking about how like I have to work a 9-to-5 job only to come home to cook and clean and handle all of these things. How about I'd rather be alone, and you expect me to choose a man that I don't actually want to be with, even though it's already too late for that woman because her body count's so high anyway. Like that is ultimate suffering. Like
It's worse too when the men will marry these women and then completely rest on their laurels the moment they get married. And then now she's doing all the stuff, but she can't leave him if she's married to him.
Correct.
Just for any reason.
Correct.
So then he's basically holding her hostage while he just sits back, and he bait and switched her.
Yes.
Which men and the red pillars are always telling us that women do that all the time.
Yeah.
But I would argue that they do it more.
They do.
And they're so entitled to their comfy times that they're not even considering the fact that they're doing it. They're just not. They think that, oh, it's normal, or it's so normalized because we live in the subconscious developed social order where vast majority rather of men are behaving this way. It's become so normalized that it's like a fish in water that doesn't realize that it's swimming in water because it's been in water its whole life. That's the level of entitlement that these men have to their comfy times, that they're willing to shirk their burden of performance as men and expect their woman to have both the feminine burden of performance and the male burden of performance at the same time, after having bait and switched her into that arrangement in the first place, leaving her with no options other than to cheat on him or divorce him, neither of which she can do biblically.
Yeah.
So
she's trapped.
She's trapped. And men can bait and switch women far worse than women can bait and switch men by doing it this way.
Actually, like if you look at the context of like the relationship starting, the women don't really bait and switch. They really don't. The only argument that you could possibly make is like if a woman gets comfortable in a relationship and her cognitive focus changes, and then oftentimes men's like, oh, she flipped on me. But the thing is though, is that dude, you're with a woman who's in incompatible cognitive development anyway. So you have to realize, as a result of you knowing that knowledge, that's what you would have ended up inheriting anyway. And if you even got yourself into that relationship to begin with, I could actually argue that you as a man were potentially dishonest with her up to begin with. There's potential there. That doesn't mean it's true in all cases, but there is a potential for that. And that's the problem. This
And
whole
you talk about that on School. That's
yeah,
season
I
42.
do. Yeah, it's season.
So if you want to learn
42.
more about that, school.com
/CS Joseph and
Yep.
get season 42.
SKOOL.
It's the compatibility season that talks about compatibility for relationships. So here's an interesting statistic provided by the LONC. 38% of women, only 38% of women actually want a relationship, while 61% of men want a relationship. Women don't even feel safe to be in relationships. I wouldn't, especially the UDP women, because they're extra vulnerable. No wonder we don't even see them in public. Like, no wonder. They're scared shitless. And in my opinion, they should be. They absolutely should be. They're trying so hard not to be feminists. They're trying so hard to hold on to their femininity. But they can't even go out in public, where the UD men are, to actually be able to have those relationships because they're scared shitless. And they should be, because 80% of men are like acting like this. And even the top 20% of men, the unconscious developed men, in many cases are also acting like this. So what choice do they fucking have? Like, holy shit. Like, it gets even more crazy because you look at like how age gaps are being extremely discouraged right now. And you said something about like age gap being discouraged. What, like you were talking about like how, so a woman should be with a man her same age, and like what was the argument that you were making?
Well, women are being discouraged from getting with men who are actually mature enough to step into the role that a man should be anyway.
Because they're not shirking their male burden of performance.
So there's this attitude in society that's like, oh, well, women should be with men their own age. Well, all of the men their own age are either too immature to uphold their end of the bargain, or unable to because they're just not there in their life yet to financially provide for a family.
Yeah.
So what is she doing with them?
Yeah, exactly.
Other than wasting time. So she's going to be with this guy who can't provide for her and a family, even if he wanted to. And most of the time they don't want to because they're too immature because they're in their 20s. And most of them are SD. So what are they basically encouraging? They're encouraging women to waste even more of their fertility window with these men who are not going to be able to do anything that they should anyway.
And they already feel trapped as is, and they already feel like they don't have any agency. And then you're saying something about, well, how is a woman getting her agency back? She ends up becoming like hypersexualized and having sex with lots of men, and then further reducing her agency. But she's doing it in a way like this whole it's not like the free love movement crap. It's more like, I'm a strong, independent woman who don't need no man. I'm free to have sex with whoever I want, because these girls are trying to prove to themselves that they actually have some kind of fucking agency, and they're actually end up destroying their own agency in the process.
And there's also the expectation. Tom Likas popularized this. So does Rollo Tomassi, that a woman should put out by the third date.
Yeah.
I think that's more Likas than Rollo. I could be wrong about that, but definitely Tom Likas said that and made that a very popular idea. So women are like, oh, well, if I don't have sex with this guy, I'm never going to get a guy. So then they become promiscuous.
Yep.
And then what do these men end up doing? They just discard them anyway.
Yeah.
So what was the whole point of having like 3 dates? Just so the guy can get laid.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
Literally it.
He's got to be star boy. He's just got to get lucky, And it's just like, the fuck.
Yeah, it's putting this false like time constraint on women.
Yeah.
To put out for them. Not for anything in return, like commitment, provision, anything. Just so that the man can feel like, oh yeah, I got laid.
I am ashamed to admit that I taught this. Literally in my content. I literally taught this concept. Like, that's just me being a shitbag. And I repent of that. I'm not doing that anymore. Fuck that. It's like... And as a result of all this crap, women are basically forced to take on masculine traits. And here's another thing. One of the girls that we basically were asking questions relating to how bad women have it, you actually noticed that she was feeling bad for even complaining about it.
Yes, I said, the floor is yours. Please tell me, like, I'm basically giving all the women permission to complain about men.
Yes.
And she felt bad about it. And she shouldn't. But even her in that situation where I made it completely socially acceptable to do so, she was still hesitant to actually do it.
Women were created to be fit helpers for men. I don't think women in general naturally want to even complain about men because it kind of goes against their psychology and their biology by default.
That's fine. That's what we're here for. We'll do it for them.
Yeah, we are. We're going to point out this bullshit. Like as soon as we get the microphones and shit, we're going to be like interviewing men in public and holding them accountable for their bullshit and their degeneracy. Also holding ourselves accountable for the degeneracy, especially me, like in the past and all this bullshit. And I may like explain to them like, no, dude, you are the problem. You are the problem. You are part of the problem. You're just another cog in the machine that you helped create, and now you are maintaining it. And these women are even like feeling like bad about themselves for even complaining. How much of that actually contributes to them not like reporting rape anyway? Like, holy fuck, you know? And there's like some like rape statistics like related to that, like, you know, like there's this claim, you know, like 97% of women have been raped. Like when I'm making the argument for biblical rape, when I'm making that argument, you could probably actually make that argument that 97% of women are actually rape victims under this biblical rape model that I'm actually putting forward here on the Hacked Off podcast. How fucked is that? It's so fucked up. Men need to fucking take ownership for their sexual sin.
Can you explain that a little bit more? Like how exactly they are committing rape according to that definition?
So, because like the anti-rape laws, according to Exodus and Deuteronomy, there's a particular clause that talks about a man who seduces a woman, and then he's expected to pay the bride price to the father. And the father has the choice to allow his daughter to be that man's husband or to actually keep his daughter away from that man, even though he's still expected to be paid the bride price from that man. And the bride price is 50 shekels of silver, which last I checked was $287,000 in today's value, by the way. And that is how much a woman's virginity is worth in terms of monetary value. This is why anti-rape laws historically have been under property destruction codes, essentially. And so even seducing a woman, which is exactly what fucking Floodspore did with his little one-night stand last night, him seducing a woman, because any form of fornication that's not like a man like seizing the woman and forcing her or whatever falls under seduction, basically. And I'm arguing that the act of seduction itself, biblically, is a form of rape as a result of the punishment being you still have to pay the bride price. You still have to pay for that fucking property destruction. And her father has the right to make sure that you are not going to be the husband of his daughter. He has that right to veto it, basically, under the Bible. So as a result of that, based on the existence of property destruction, we know that anti-rape laws are historically under property destruction. I am basically claiming that fornication or seduction is equivalent to biblical rape. That is what I am saying. And a lot of men out there need to realize, oh shit, oh my God, I might be a biblical rapist. And they need to take responsibility for that and repent of that behavior. You know, obviously there's legal definitions of what constitutes rape, etc. But I'm talking a higher standard, the biblical standard, a much higher standard. And men need to take some fucking responsibility in this area, because having extramarital sex, doesn't matter if it's premarital or not, but extramarital sex, there is, in my opinion, from a biblical perspective, rape actually happening in that situation. Because the only way it's not rape, biblically, is if sexuality is kept within covenant marriage. That is the argument that I am making. This is why, like, you know, yeah, at least at a minimum, I would tell people in my teachings, if you're having sex with a woman, you better fucking keep her. But like at the same time, there's even higher standards, there's a higher moral standard that you can see in Torah from the Bible. And this is why I'm making the argument that these men are robbing, killing, and destroying women. They're destroying women because they're imprinting themselves upon women, and women become attached to men that they have sex with, okay? And the Bible's aware of that attachment. Like when you read Torah, you can see that the attachment is there, you know, especially because, like, you know, when Moses is talking about, oh, she was seduced. The Bible is basically stating like a woman does not have the judgment to actually consent in the first place. It is actually her father who supposed to have the judgment, the male judgment, to consent on her behalf when he gives her away in marriage. You see what I'm saying? That is how it should be. But this whole like consensual sex thing under like modern definitions of sexuality is fake news. It's bullshit. It is complete bullshit. Fornication, extramarital sex, I'm arguing, is biblical rape, and men need to be held to this higher standard. That's like, if I'm going to go on a date with a woman, I am not having sex with her at all, unless her father gives me the green light to marry his daughter, and I will only have sexual relations with a woman in that context, ever, forever, and that's how it is, and that is how I will be teaching my children. Because outside of that, because otherwise you're just robbing the father. You're robbing the woman for $287,000 virginity. You're robbing the father of all of his relationship equity that is invested in that woman because he fed her, he clothed her, he was hopefully being an example of what a man should be to his daughter and giving her attention, allowing her femininity to blossom. But no, like Satan is the robber, the killer, and the destroyer. And that's ultimately what there's even another verse in Torah talking about a man who seizes a woman in an open field, seizing her, which is basically the modern legal definition of what rape actually is. He rapes her in a field, basically. And then Moses writes, as God speaking through him, saying like that is the equivalent, because it's in the verse, that is the equivalent of attacking and murdering your neighbor. And that man is basically executed under the law. She's not, but he is. Because it's the equivalent of attacking and murdering your neighbor. This is why rape is extremely heinous. Now, it's less heinous in terms of the seduction, but it still qualifies that under rape, in my opinion, biblically speaking, because the father still has the choice, because he's getting his $287,000, but he still has the choice to decide whether or not his daughter should be with that man who seduced her or not. You see what I'm saying? So seduction is a serious fucking problem. And this is one of the major problems about degeneracy within our society. We even see it in The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene. Men have created an entire art around this. And it's just like, wow, men in general should be holding their heads in fucking shame for what they've done and repented of this bullshit. We have to hold ourselves and each other to a higher standard because we cannot allow this to happen ever again. It is absolutely reprehensible. And so because of these issues, they're forced to take on masculine traits. They're feeling bad about complaining. In my opinion, it's one of the reasons why they don't even report rapes that happen to them in general. And because of this, women end up becoming meaner because they have these masculine traits, to the point where female space in general is just crabs in a bucket behavior, where the women are actually pointing the fingers at each other instead of, because they already feel bad about complaining about men in general, as we've seen. They just do, because they weren't really created to do that. They were created to be fit helpers. And I think naturally women want to be fit helpers for the men in their lives. I believe naturally they do, because that's how God made them. And what have men done? We've destroyed them. We've destroyed them. Look at OnlyFans. We've destroyed them, and we continue to destroy them. Sophie Rain may be a virgin, but she's destroyed. She's committing sexual immorality. She's destroyed. Do you think any man worth his salt would ever actually commit to her? She'll be forever in sex only category, except for the schlub that she ends up inevitably marrying and then having children with and then initiating divorce on him. And then that just further perpetuates the problem of fatherlessness, which means, we're going to have the curse upon the earth yet again because of the lack of masculinity, because we're not able to turn the hearts of fathers to their sons, the hearts of sons to their fathers, because of this entire situation. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. It gets even worse. Here's the thing: these fucking feminist men, these fucking SD men, and also feminist women are consistently shutting down what is perceived as traditional or conservative topics that women are trying to do in order to actually maintain their femininity. They can't even go to female space to even do this, because there is no female space, because there's no male space, because men are not holding each other accountable. And then when men do actually hold men accountable, those men are shirking their accountability.
Yeah, making excuses.
Yeah.
Turning it around on
Yeah.
the guy
No
calling them
one
out.
told me. I didn't know. That seems to be like the usual excuse.
And they weren't held accountable by their weak fathers.
Yeah.
So they're not used to accountability from men.
Yeah.
So they view it as you or me or anyone else attempting to emasculate them.
Yes.
And therefore they reject it entirely.
Yes. And because they have these they have to take on these masculine traits, they're more psychologically open to becoming, workers in the workforce. And then that leads to workforce discrimination. It also, because they're working so hard and being exposed to toxic environments, because they're not away from the home, because the home is the least toxic environment usually, they become infertile. They can't even have children. People want to understand where birth rates are going. And then they end up getting blamed by men for being infertile after the fact, when they were actually just set up for failure. Women are just being set up for failure consistently. And on top of that, these SD men, this SD environment, create these societal rewards, like money, like OnlyFans, for women being sexual, taking bribes for being sexual, basically. That's OnlyFans. It's like a soft level of prostitution. Like my ESTP mentor taught me a concept, all women are whores. And it's like, well, what choice do they have? They have to survive somehow. And that's what's actually going on. And it's absolutely terrible. This puts even additional pressure on women, especially when you consider AI and all these fake AI-generated women in photos or video or whatever, and these men are simping after AI women. That's even worse. Or here's another really fucked up concept. I actually have been following these android women, female companions that men can buy and have sex with, even though they're just fucking robots in their own homes. And this technology, it's fucked. Like that, this is a thing. It is.
On the other hand,
inevitable.
that's still better than spinning plates. At least they're not causing that.
Yeah, at least they're
kind
not
of
doing
damage.
that. But it's also a form of shirking their burden of male performance, because it's no different, basically, than like a form of pornography, which is the ultimate form of shirking a male burden of performance anyway. Which, by the way, pornography, those women are basically being exploited because that's property destruction. Pornography is property destruction at the end of the day. I had a horrible porn habit that started at age 14 and lasted through age 21 or 22, basically. And that was a serious problem, even for me. And here I am contributing to the harm as a shitbag. And the temptation to look at pornography, it's always there and it's always with me all the time, eating me alive. I've come up with some coping strategies on how to do this. But those women, sexuality is technically their only actual agency in life. And why else do women, when they're doing protests and whatnot, and then they're going topless on their protests, basically, or flashing their tits out in public, because sexuality is their only real agency. And yet men are taking advantage and exploiting that agency, especially from pornography. This is one of the reasons why I look at the Tate brothers, who got rich literally on basically being pornographers, essentially. And they're, rob, kill, and destroy. I can claim that it's kill and destroy because the Bible literally says, the woman being seized in the field, it's the equivalent of attacking and murdering your neighbor. You see what I'm saying? They don't even understand. People don't realize that this society is so blessed that God is not making rain fire from the sky over this shit. But it is coming. It is inevitable. The prophet Malachi predicted this in chapter 4, verses 5 and 6, specifically verse 6. And that's our future if we don't fucking turn this around. Then as a result, there comes this feminist push that leads to body shaming of women, eating disorders, extremely high beauty standards, especially when you look at social media, these AI deep fakes that are on social media that women have to compete with. And then also there's the women who are trying to get any kind of attention they possibly get by showing off their body on social media, especially Instagram and whatnot. because Instagram is basically a dating app, or having puberty dysphoria, which I didn't really know much about until we had July Bug from the community actually talking about this puberty dysphoria, where she's claiming to have bound her breasts to make it look like she hasn't developed her breasts yet in order to avoid male attention, in order to avoid the male gaze, so that she could feel safer where she is in public. This is a serious, serious problem. And then the reverse of that, which is the body positivity movement. That also gets even worse. And then there's also women just know, especially the UDP women, they know that they're physically weak. You know what? And I actually had the belief that, women shouldn't be so afraid of being raped. But when I understand the implications of biblical rape, what I'm arguing is biblical rape, definitionally speaking, when I'm coming to that conclusion, women should absolutely be afraid. Their fathers should be afraid. Holy shit. Because, Asmund Gold would say, we should go Old Testament on these people. If we're going Old Testament on these people, there would be public executions over this shit. How the fuck have we lost our way as men? How the fuck have we lost our way as a society? It's reprehensible. It is disgusting. Especially, it's absolutely terrible. And so as a result, female space has become toxic and poisonous because the women have had to take on so many masculine traits. They don't have their feminine traits. Women need to be able to establish friends with other women, and they do that by being selfish. They do that by asking other women for advice. And it gives women an ego boost when they are asked advice, and then that actually is what creates female friendship, is women humbling themselves to ask other women for advice. The problem is that there's no women worth asking advice from because they've built up these masculine traits. So as a result, women in general have less female friends, literally because of this. And they're not able to have female friends. And the men are judging these women for not having female friends because that's a red flag, because it is technically a red flag.
But it's the red flag that we deserve.
It's the red flag that we deserve. It is. It is absolutely. But men are judging women and then not committing to women. I was talking to a man recently who was talking to me about breaking up with a woman and why he did it. And it wasn't it was anything less than perfection. And it's just what the fuck are you doing? Holy shit. If you're missing something in that woman, just go get another woman who has that trait. It's not hard. Use your polygynous fucking sexual strategy. Oh, but you're sold on this whole monogamy idealistic ideal, which is actually bullshit. It's not even biblical. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 16 actually proves that it's not biblical. Fuck these people. They don't even actually understand that. And so as a result, female space has become toxic and poisonous, and women can't even get real support from other women. So then they have to, and because women are collectively running towards feminism, because they don't have a choice, because they're computers, not programmers, okay? They're running to feminism because they're invested in their own survival, because they're more vulnerable, and they know this. There is no actual true female support for one another, and it creates this crabs in a bucket behavior that leads to jealousy and envy from women. They're using their witch energy, they're using their crone energy to hold each other, and they're just shitting on each other, and you're not miserable like me, so I'm going to destroy your life because you're not miserable like me. And they're going to and they destroy each other because they themselves have already been robbed, killed, and destroyed by men in their life. Holy shit. So female space is entirely toxic and poisonous. And you know what this leads to? The temptation for male friends. The other really bad red flag. The red flag that we deserve. Another one. The temptation to actually have male friends. There's no such thing as a woman having male friends. The only reason a man is a friend with a woman is because he wants to fuck her, because of the sexual agenda always being present. There's no such thing as platonic relationships.
And she can't go to her father because her father is also weak.
Yeah.
Can't go to him for advice because he would encourage her down the wrong path.
He's
so what choice, again, are women left with?
Exactly.
They really have no good options are left.
They're trapped.
In most cases.
They're trapped. I could just see Jesus, they die and they're in front of Jesus, and he kneels down to these girls and he's like, neither do I, I don't condemn you. I could see that happening because of what men have done. Holy fuck. It's so bad, and we don't even deserve the earth, this great earth that we have. We don't even deserve it because of what's happening. And it gets even worse because then you look at mixed space where you have male and women, men and women with a sexual agenda present. But here's the problem. I don't care. I don't care if you're SD or UD as a woman. I don't care what type you are. I don't give a flying fuck. Because women were created to be fit helpers towards men to the point where they feel bad about themselves for complaining. Well, guess what? Women end up they lead with trust, and they do it too soon. So then all of a sudden, they're opening themselves to the biblically seducing rapist, basically, because she led with trust, and then she's out her $287,000 virginity, basically, and also potentially dishonored her father in the process. And her value is greatly reduced. We know it is because you shared those stable marriage rate statistics. Just one partner means there's only a 50% chance of her actually having a stable marriage with just one partner. So loss of virginity, and if they're not married, guess what? It's a 50-50 chance that she's even going to have a stable marriage. That's bullshit. Compared to the woman who loses her virginity because it's basically her father giving her virginity to his son-in-law that he approved to marry her, and then they have an 83% chance of having a stable marriage. What in the flying fuck are we doing? What are we doing, guys? What the fuck are we doing? Holy shit. Like, how can you live with yourselves? Like, I struggle living with myself over my own shit. But how can you guys live with yourselves? You need to fucking repent. Holy fuck. Like how can I, how can you even have self-respect? How can I respect you? How can anyone respect you? Like, holy shit, you got to watch out for this. And what these men end up doing, and I've seen UD men do this. You know, I've seen SD men in general do this, lying to women about commitment. They just do, like what Tom Likas teaches. And then, as you said, the subconscious developed men especially are baiting and switching men.
That includes lying by omission, by the way.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Lying by omission.
You're not off the hook just because, oh, well, I didn't technically lie.
Rollo Tomassi.
Your actions speak louder than your words anyway.
Yes. And Rollo Tomassi directly teaches, I believe, in his first book to lie about omission when it comes to plate spinning. In like the plate spinning in the plate spinning chapter, where women are asking like, so are we gonna are you gonna commit or whatever? And he says, oh, just don't talk about commitment and just keep fucking her. That's what he says. Disgusting. You know, I actually gave my father, I was so far gone, I actually gave my father a copy of the Rationale and had him read it. And he was so disgusted with me, and rightfully so. It's one of the greatest shames of my life, frankly. Like, I don't blame him for his judgments of me. I just wish that he'd give me consideration in terms of my path towards repentance for this stupid behavior. You know, and then and here's another thing. Women, especially when they're implosive, because all women start out implosive when they're unconscious developed, they have fear of rejection. They have fear of rejection. Women have fear of rejection. And what these men are doing are preying upon their fear of rejection. And how women get over their fear of rejection is that they end up being very trusting up front, because women in general want to be that fit helper for their man anyway, because she was created to do so. So she's actually being more courageous than these men anyway, because she's getting over her fear of rejection and just willfully choosing to trust her man. I had that very same conversation with my wife last night during pillow talk, where she told me that she was holding something, not necessarily against me, holding something in fear relating to our marriage that's gone back years. And she has that fear. And it's eating her alive. And she told me directly that she is just choosing to trust me and my leadership, even though she is scared. This is an example of a woman working hard to be fit, a fit helper. When the fuck are we actually going to honor these women? When are we going to do this, gentlemen? Stop being pieces of shit. Stop being shitbags. Stop it. And you know what? They even feel even more pressure. You brought this up. What did you say? Was it shorter prime? How did you describe it?
Women have a much shorter time frame to figure all this stuff out than men. They have to get it figured out.
But they shouldn't. Arguably, their father should be figuring it out.
Yes.
But they don't have that.
They realistically have between the ages of 18 and 25 and then you could technically extend that to 30
Yeah.
in some cases
Yeah.
to figure all this stuff out before it's too late for them.
Yeah.
Men can figure this stuff out later in life and redeem themselves without having their value diminished.
Exactly.
So women have this extra burden on them to figure it out sooner. And again, like you said, that's on the fathers
Yes.
to help with that. And how many fathers are actually doing that?
Like none. Like literally none. Like, because as you stated, it's harder for women to preserve value than create value. You know, like, they have to preserve their value. They can't create value. They don't have, it's the male burden of performance to create value. A woman just has to submit.
Because men are born without value and must work their lives to attain it. Women are born with value and must hold on to it.
Yeah, and my wife last night was basically doing her female burden of performance of submitting me and literally telling me, I'm choosing to trust you in this area even though I am scared. How many times has my wife, for example, been too afraid of complaining or feeling bad about complaining? It probably happens every day. I guarantee you that happens daily because she is trying very hard not to shirk her female burden of performance and prove to me that she is a fit helper, because that's all girls want to do. They want to prove to their daddy that they're fit as a daughter. They want to prove to their men, their husbands, that they are fit as helpers. I guarantee you that any woman who, like most women, I would say probably 9 out of 10 women, when they're like giving up their virginity to a man, is because they imagine to themselves that they are trusting this man to not let go of her and to keep her indefinitely. That's what needs to happen.
And a lot of that is
happen,
not programmed into them.
It's not.
A lot of that is instinct.
It is.
Because this is how men are supposed to behave and how they have behaved for eons. And now men are not behaving that way, but women are still operating on their instincts. And their instincts are not serving them in this degenerate society right now.
It's their biology, it's their psychology. God literally created them to act that way. They can't help it. The only thing that gets in the way is because they have to psychologically develop masculine traits in order to fucking survive within this society. Holy shit. And like it's so bad. And then comes the age-old statement: women age like men. Men age like fine wine.
Women age like what?
Like milk. They age like milk, and they spoil so quickly.
And that's not to put them down. That's just stating like the facts. These red pillars will use that as like an insult for women.
They will, consistently. I am guilty of that. I have used that as an insult to women. I was on the Myron Gaines fucking train. I was on the Rollo Tomassi train. I was on the Whatever podcast train even with Andrew Wilson. I hella supported these guys. I thought they were doing a good thing. No. What they're doing is reprehensible. It is evil. And they are perpetuating a society where women are being robbed, killed, and destroyed. They're like, these men don't even realize it, but they are actually perpetuating Satanism and ultimately demonic behavior consistently. Like, it's such fucking bullshit. And I was a part of that, and I regret that. And then as a result, there's the perception of women losing value as one ages, you know, and then all of a sudden their sexual options become limited. And especially if they've already been robbed of their virginity, basically. Even if a woman consents to it, she's still being robbed, by the way, biblically. This is why I'm arguing that seduction is a form of biblical rape, by the way. Okay? Holy shit.
And they're robbing the father of his agency as well.
Exactly.
Even if he doesn't acknowledge as the father that he even has any, because he's so far gone too.
Exactly. And so this creates a modern rape mentality, which is like the biblical covert rapist, which is, you know, which leads to something, in my opinion, the worst evil of it. Here's the thing. When a man has sex with a woman, it is a permanent imprint on her brain and her body. Okay? It is a permanent etching of her soul. We know this because of 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 16. Whether or not you follow Paul or not is immaterial, because he says, do you not know that when you unite yourself with a prostitute, you're becoming one flesh with her? And then you combine that with Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. A man will leave his mother and father and cleave unto his wife, and the two will become one flesh. Like, that one fleshness, right? is like this huge biological, psychological tie that a woman has. That man is imprinted upon her, and then as a result, she's hooked. Sexuality and having sex with a woman is a drug. It is a drug to women, okay? So oftentimes, like, this is like the man who goes out of his way knowing that if he has sex with her, he's going to like pull her in even more, and he's going to keep her even more, and then she's going to be addicted to him even more. And then he's able to take her even more and further rob and further kill and further destroy her more, even though he has no intention of committing to her at all. And it is completely psychologically and biologically taking advantage of women. I am advocating that this is the final disgusting form of what biblical rape actually is. And this happens consistently. It is absolutely terrible. And as a result, women end up becoming stuck in this abusive, non-committal relationship. And their fathers are basically entirely like they're fucked over and also taken advantage of. And then guess what? Women, after that happens, they have to deal with higher scrutiny for sexual choices and mistakes. Wow. And then they're the ones who are punished for it. Wow. And then as a result, rape and sexual assault are insanely common. There might be actually a message that you could go into that chat and find Jalibeg's message about it. It's like one of the big ones. And it talks about how her argument is that rape and sexual assault is horribly common. And if you could have the opportunity to read her message to the audience, I think that would be absolutely critical for these people to give consideration to that. But while you're looking for that, I'm going to make a couple of additional statements. There's also this thing that Jalibeg also stated, which I hope you can find and you can read it. She talks about blame culture, and where women themselves are being blamed for rape. I'm arguing that biblically, because women don't actually have the agency to consent. It's only really her father who has the ability to consent. And by the way, a father, in my opinion, who actually allows his daughter to consent, he himself is actually, shirking his burden of performance as a father to his daughter. I actually was talking to a subconscious developed man recently who literally did this, and he was making excuses like, well, my daughter's a grown-ass woman. And yet at the same time, all of a sudden, I bet if someone actually spoke to her, she'd be like, well, Dad, why did you let me go to college? Why did you let me leave the house? Why did you let me do this? And basically put me at the mercy of these men, these seducers committing biblical rape against me. Why did you put me in that situation? Is not that father going to have to answer for that? And the amount of damage that has come upon his own daughter? Is that not going to happen?
No, because he was too busy sending her off to college so that she could potentially be the one to take care of him in old age, when he should be actually having his sons do that. And if you don't have enough kids to where you have a son, then just have more.
Yeah, and then
there's no excuse to put that burden on your daughters.
There's no excuse. And people are like, oh, well,
I don't care if you're a girl dad.
Yeah.
And then if you for some reason you have 7 kids that are all girls, whatever, work harder then so that you don't have to put that pressure on your daughters to take care of you and masculinize them in the process.
Even though biblically
that's
it's
still your burden as the father.
Yes.
Doesn't matter how hard it is, or
yes.
what your circumstance is, or what your excuse is. Work harder.
Work harder. You just have to work harder. You should be lock maxing. None of this resting on your laurels bullshit. If you didn't have sons, that's on you. Just keep having children. Oh, well, my wife at the time couldn't have more. Get another wife. That's why polygyny exists. Holy shit. And if you don't think polygyny is biblically around, go fucking buy the Man of Options book at polygamybook.com and get fucking educated from a biblical perspective, you piece of shit.
And if you can't handle this, then just don't have kids. Don't have a family. Don't be the family man. Also, don't spin plates.
Yeah.
If you can't compete as a man and be the safety net for yourself and others, then just stay on the sidelines. But don't make it worse for anyone else while you're doing that.
Yeah.
You're not entitled to anything.
Yeah, just like caveman breaking women in and explaining how he's benefiting everybody else in the process. It's so disgusting.
I mean, he still didn't explain why that is. He just asserted that was the case. He has actually no argument for that. by the way.
No, he doesn't. It's terrible. It's so terrible. Did you happen to find the message?
I have it right here.
All right, go ahead.
She says, rape and sexual assault are horribly common. I've seen so many men say that the 97% stat is made up because they think it means that if 97% of women are victims, then feminists are claiming that 97% of men are predators. No, it's just a smaller percentage of men harass multiple women. By the time I was 12, I think all the girls in my age group, including me, had been either sexually harassed, assaulted, or raped by boys our age or older, or by grown men. Boys don't really receive much punishment either, and girls learn quickly that it's part of being a girl, and it's extremely normalized from a young age. She continues, the blame culture is also so common and just makes it worse for girls who are ashamed so that they don't tell anyone, because they think it's their fault and that they're going to hell. Later in life, they often turn to promiscuity as a way to reclaim a sense of agency in their sexuality, and it F's them up so bad. I am not against the fact that sometimes there are times when women could be a bit smarter about being responsible and keeping themselves safe. For example, not getting blackout drunk at a stranger's house party. But the sentiment that women need to take more responsibility for being sexually assaulted is the kind of thing that often falls on the ears of the wrong women. Women who are not to blame and are sacked with guilt, while the careless ones can never be convinced to take actual accountability. The vast majority of rape and sexual assault cases are not done by strangers in a dark alleyway. It's done by men and women who they knew and trusted, even cousins, uncles, or their own father or stepfather.
Stepfathers, yeah, babysitters as well was another classification. It's so terrible. And, when blame I shared a story about a woman that I knew who disobeyed her father, went out her window to go hang out with some guy, and he did sexually assault her, and that was pretty rough. And yeah, claiming that women have this lack of obedience to their fathers, and then if they end up getting sexually assaulted as a result, they could be blamed for that, etc. Okay, I can understand that argument. However, from a biblical perspective, because I'm basically exposing here that I do not have the belief that women even have the judgment to consent or not outside of marriage to begin with, from a biblical perspective, they can't. This blame culture is absolutely reprehensible, and it has to completely stop. Especially I saw this funny meme on X recently, and it's not necessarily funny as much as it is just sad. Is that and it shows the pictures of attractive female actors who are all of a sudden being casted for roles, and it says at the bottom, "Oh, great! Female casting for movies is so much better ever since Harvey Weinstein was in jail." And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can kind of see that. Interesting point. But the blame culture is ultimately what enables people like Harvey Weinstein from being able to continue to do what he's doing to these women anyway. And they consistently have this pressure in the back of their heads as a result of that. And it gets even worse. When you look at purity culture from a church perspective, it gets even worse because that is also contributing to guilt and shame. So rape victims don't speak up, on top of women trying to prove to themselves and other people that they are fit helpers as they are created to do so by God. And then all of a sudden they end up being conditioned over time that they should feel bad for even complaining that they were raped or sexually assaulted. Great. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. We don't know how good we have it, because in my opinion, fire should be raining from the sky over all of us right now. Seriously.
And these are all things that men don't have to worry about.
Yeah.
And if they're subconscious developed, they're
but
not
apparently men have it better. Apparently.
Because they're not even considering anyone other than themselves, because these men are behaving like children and they are solipsistic.
Yeah.
So they are entirely disregarding the other side of the story.
Yeah.
Because they're too self-centered to even factor it into the equation. And that's the root of why they want to, or they envy women for having it on easy, is because all that does when they say that is expose their own entitlement mentality and the fact that they are not considerate to anything other than their own bubble that they're currently in.
Yep.
So that says way more about them than they realize.
Oh, yeah. 100%. Like, here's another example. Like, we've been talking about how, you know, women are feeling bad about complaining. They're trying to prove to themselves and others that they're fit helpers, you know, to be with their man or for their men and even for their fathers, etc. And then, like, they end up, like, and they consistently prove that because they often make themselves worse by, you know, putting themselves second during, like, a crisis where, like, you know, bad things happen, they got to take care of their husband, or bad things happen, they got to take care of their children. And women are consistently having to put themselves second for the sake of others because they're constantly trying to prove to themselves and others that they are a fit helper to begin with. And then they feel bad about complaining about it. Okay. You know, and I've actually had the benefit of having women in my life look at me, oh my God, Chase, you work so hard. You know, there's no way that I can work as hard as much as you and whatnot. And I'm like thinking to myself, you haven't had children yet. You will understand exactly why I work as fucking hard as I do now. Because when you have children, and it takes a village to raise a child, when you have children, you will fucking understand really fucking quick. And I feel really bad for those masculinized career women who end up having that epiphany while being married to a weak-ass man that they're statistically more likely to development phase and initiate divorce against anyway. You know, and not that I'm advocating for that, because that is wrong and that it would be adultery on the part of a woman for initiating divorce against a man, and that is sin. But oftentimes women are looking at themselves and being like, I don't really have any other choice. The men need to be held accountable. As iron sharpens iron, so does man to another. And it's time to bring out the fucking irons for these men and hold them accountable. It absolutely has to do that. And you know what this ends up leading to? As you had stated with July Bugs, that you read, another woman stated that women are now having this mental tax, this stress that they feel every time they go out in public because they have to be hyper vigilant, you know, in any and every environment as a result of this sexual agenda, as a result of how the fact that this risk of seduction is happening, this risk of being sexually assaulted, this risk of being, you know, biblically raped, all these different things. They have to be very, very hyper vigilant because they don't have men in their lives to protect them. They don't have men in their lives to guide them with proper male judgment, because all of the men are just being entitled to women, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to be entitled to what's between your legs, and I'm not going to actually commit, and they just use them up and destroy them. And women then are even robbed of their opportunity to, they themselves, to be able to preserve their own value, while these men are robbing from them and destroying these women's value anyway. It's absolutely, it's like it's chicken or an egg argument. Women are completely trapped. They are completely trapped, especially in the United States of America. They are fallen in this trap, and there's not really much they can do. You know, imagine, you know, growing up in a society where you don't have that trap, and then yet still the wisest man on the earth says, you know, I know something more bitter than death itself, and that is the woman whose heart is traps and whose hands are shackles. And only the man who pleases God will escape her, but the wicked man will be ensnared by her. And if men are having that perspective in a society that is a lot healthier, that doesn't have that issue, but then this is like the female version of that verse, if you think about it, because they're all in this stupid trap, this huge fornication culture trap, and they're all being taken advantage of. They're not being supported by their families. We're going to be discussing, we're having a complete episode in the future discussing how the church is also a huge problem. And then also how the health industry is also a huge problem for women specifically, like for example, birth control, and how birth control itself is setting women up for failure, and that is also a huge problem. Now, as a result, this society, this SD society, is to blame. But here's the thing, SD men, sure, but UD men are also sharing the blame as well, because we're all acting this way, or have acted this way. This is also a huge fucking problem, you know, because and as a result, these actions basically prove that men in general do not care about their sons or their daughters. And what we need to be doing is educating, protecting children. Because, and if we don't turn the hearts of fathers to sons, the hearts of sons to fathers, the earth is going to be struck with a curse of utter destruction by God himself. Just like the last time masculinity was thrown to aside because of Adam's stupid behavior, because he put Eve on a pedestal acting like an SD cuck, and he did get cucked, and then he decided to like basically put her pussy on a fucking pedestal, and he had sex with her anyway, completely shirking his masculinity, He should have rejected her. And then when that happened, the earth was cursed. But the next curse that God would give is that the earth will end up being destroyed, literally as a result of this lack of masculinity. Where is the male idealism? Where is the idealism? There is no male idealism when it comes to this society at all. Women are just being used up and discarded like trash. And men in general are all guilty of it. We have literally created the problem, and we're maintaining the problem, and we're blaming women for it, all the while claiming that people like Andrew Wilson and Myron Gaines and Freshman CEO and Rollo Tomassi and Michael Sartain and the Tate brothers and all these fucks are the heroes. They're not heroes.
They're only seen as heroes because they enable the male solipsism of these man children
Exactly.
to continue living in their bubble.
Exactly.
And never allowing them to come out of it, because men are not holding other men accountable. They're enabling men to be without accountability.
Yep.
So everything they have done has only made things worse, and it's the most disgusting thing to see them virtue signal, like, oh, I'm helping men. Like Rollo will post these stories of like men who've like emailed him saying how much they've helped.
I am guilty of that in my own content.
And these men, while they're thanking him, are completely oblivious to the fact that they were not actually helped. They think they were helped, but they weren't. And they're inflicting damage on everyone around them while acting like they've gone through some like transformational process that made them a better man. No, they haven't.
And I sorely regret teaching a doctrine of demons on my own platform as a content creator, especially to the men of the men's group. I am completely and utterly in the wrong, and I repent of that behavior. And repentance is a journey. It's a consistent daily choice. There is no arriving at repentance. Repentance is a consistent state that you have to maintain, because it is actually part of your male burden of performance. Because if you think about it, women, yeah, sure, the reason why like women are not allowing themselves to be held accountable, especially when it comes to feminism, OnlyFans, pornography, all of these different things, is because like
the men aren't holding themselves accountable first.
Exactly.
So no wonder women aren't holding themselves accountable, because where men lead, women follow. Where are the men? Where are they leading?
Where's the programmers? There's all these computers.
They're leading themselves into less accountability.
Yeah.
And then they wonder why women in turn are behaving worse in response.
Yes.
But somehow that's their fault.
Yeah. They're being entirely and utterly blamed for all this. And these gender dynamics is like a serious, serious problem. Fathers aren't there to defend their daughters. Husbands are being robbed by other men. Fathers are being robbed by other men in this area. The women themselves are being destroyed in the process. And like I said, it's the equivalent of attacking and murdering your neighbor. You know, from that verse in the Bible, it's like, holy, holy shit. And it's like, you know, we need to repent immediately, gentlemen. Like, here's something also reprehensible. When I actually explain these concepts to other men, they end up having this perspective of, well, I don't want to have to go deal with her father. I don't want to have to go talk to her father. He's obviously going to say no. Yeah.
Why would he obviously say no? Because they know deep down that they're a schlub and are not worth that woman's time.
Exactly.
And they know that they should be embarrassed to ask permission from the father, because they know that they have bad intentions.
Exactly.
And lying by omission does not change that fact.
No,
Pretending like they're not doing what they're doing just because they didn't say it out loud does not change that fact. They know by the fact that they're not willing to go to the father that they have bad intentions, but they just won't admit it out loud. They think if I just conceal my intentions, then I'm fine. As long as I don't say out loud what a piece of shit I am, that I'm not a piece of shit. No, you can't stick your head in the sand. We all see you for what you are.
Yeah.
Your head's in the sand, but the rest of our heads are not, and we see exactly what you're doing.
Yep.
And they don't want the father to see it too. That's why he's declining the opportunity for the father to step in and reject this man, because they put their comfort zone and their ability to get laid over everyone.
And little do they know that if the man has the balls to actually talk to her father, he is actually increasing the chances that the woman would be attracted to him, because he actually has the stones to actually talk to her father.
But they're afraid of that too, because that might mean, oh, God forbid, they have to actually commit and provide for that woman,
yes, exactly.
which they're not prepared to do, because they're hyper invested into their own comfort zone and
pussy maxing,
their own safety net, and not providing that for anyone else.
Oh wait, that's
because they don't want to grow up.
Bloodsport last night.
Yes. Disgusting.
Like, completely and utterly disgusting. And I regret behaving that same exact way. I regret it. Greatest regrets of my life come from sexual sin. Sexual sin is a compounding sin. Everyone's like, oh, all sins equal. And it's like, okay, that's nice. But I don't entirely believe that's true, especially when you commit sexual sin, you are violating multiple commandments at the same time. Fucking grow up, guys. Understand what you're doing. You need to fucking repent. Stop this immediate behavior. Start working on yourself. Start lock-maxing. Become something worthy of a father saying yes. And stop being so afraid. Because you usually, like, being afraid of fear of rejection with women, what a fucking loser. You should really be afraid of father's rejection, you piece of shit. Like, seriously. Like, change your behavior. Fucking act differently. Okay? Because, like, women deserve better. A lot better. And
Myron Gaines deserves less.
Yeah.
Myron Gaines deserves nothing.
Yeah.
He deserves less than nothing. He deserves justice for the amount of harm he's inflicted on the world with his disgusting podcast. Same with Brian from Whatever, Andrew Wilson, all the guys you just named, Rollo Tomassi, Tom Likas, all of them.
Yeah, you had talked about actually bringing Roosh on the show.
Roosh is the only one who has even remotely come close to the level of repentance that you are trying to do with this show.
Trying.
The only one out there.
Yeah, and I'd like to have him on the show so that he can call out all of these fucks in the process.
He even went so far as to unpublish all of his books because he saw that the harm that it was causing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's really great. And I'm glad that I have unpublished a lot of my lectures, based on this topic specifically. And the problem is, though, is that it's so weaved in most of my content. I have 1,000 videos on fucking YouTube, and there's so much shit in there that I put in those YouTube channels where I'm literally teaching degeneracy and teaching evil.
You had someone on your channel the other day comment, "What's wrong with being a womanizer?"
Oh, God.
And I don't know how long they've been subscribed, but maybe they got the idea from you in the past, and now they're seeing the change of heart and wondering why that's happening.
Yeah.
Well, they need to start watching the podcast.
Exactly.
Hopefully, I think we should respond to that person.
This show, quite frankly, it's my penance. This show is my penance. This show is me proving repentance with action. Okay, this is I abhor myself because of the poor example that I have been to other men and to the women and children in my life. All the shit that I've been going through in my life, it's yeah, you know what, holy fucking shit, and while, people make claims about me that are not true, that's immaterial, because the problem is the principles. The problem is the principles and the lack of principles, because I've been, as my father would say, teaching secular humanism, teaching degeneracy, all of these different things. And I just have to fucking go away from it. I have to immediately turn this ship around. And that's why we're doing this. And that's why we're working very hard. And that's why feminist women are flocking to us as quickly as possible. Because let's be honest, the feminist women are the biggest victims. They're the ones who have suffered the most.
They're the ones who feel the most unsafe, and they must have a reason for that.
Exactly.
I have another thing to add.
Okay.
1 second, let me find it.
If it's just men are being entitled to the wrong things, and it's that entitlement that is the entitlement of boys, because they're so fucking effeminate, especially when they're subconscious. Because remember, children start out implosive, but men need to actually earn the attention they get instead of just being given attention. This is what, for example, Pastor Mark Driscoll calls being over-mothered and under-fathered, right? Fathers, if you're a single dad or you've had your children taken away from you or whatever, you still have to understand that even in a divorce situation, and I actually learned this in class recently, even in a divorced situation, those children will feel it forever, and it will never go away. It's just such a problem. I mean, even you have that same issue, even in your own life, basically. And you yourself have had to suffer that pain of divorce. And you, as the child of your parents, are still paying the price even this day. Like, we have to understand, like, this, like women are trapped. We have to free these women from the trap, but that only happens as a result of male accountability. And that is what we're trying to do with this show. Male accountability, okay? Because as soon as the men are starting to walk up in uprightness and through righteousness, where men lead, women follow. That is the importance of it. So yeah.
So July Bug said this as well. Girls react to the male gaze, eyes of society, sexualization, objectification by rejecting conventional beauty entirely. They cut and dye their hair, dress like men, or wear heavy makeup in response to being told that they look better natural. Not caring about the system takes the power away from its judgment, at least mentally. The women who are butch and have like these disgusting tattoos everywhere and they cut their hair short and they're trying to look ugly on purpose are the women who feel the most unsafe around men. And I believe that they have a reason for that, whatever life experience
wonder
led up to that. Why is that?
Yeah.
Did they have nothing but horrible experiences with men their
Were they
entire
sexually
life?
assaulted as
Probably.
children?
So I
Yeah.
will never look at a woman who's covered in tattoos and has like a shaved head the same way ever again.
Yeah, I actually
I
had
won't.
that. I actually had that epiphany 2 days ago because I had one such woman approach me who looked like that in public, and I wondered to myself, you know, as much as I could judge you for being a walking red flag factory right now, those red flags are not something that you're producing in your factory. Those red flags were literally shoved into you, and you were impaled with them by the men in your life. I am so sorry.
And it'll be the same men who caused those red flags in the first place to be the first ones to judge those women
Exactly.
harshly when it's themselves, again, that are the root of the issue.
We have destroyed our helpers. We as men have made our helpers unfit. That's the reality. That's the cruel reality of the world. Anyway, folks, thanks for watching and listening. We'll see you guys in the next episode.